Starting, we have Dr. Nicholas Koop, who's the Forest Resources Management Department head and the director of the program. We have myself, who's the MGEM program coordinator. We have one of our alumni with us, Gwen Taylor, who graduated last year from the program. And we also have Lee Epiton with us, who's the admissions coordinator. Next slide. So to start off today, I wanted to begin by acknowledging the land that we are gathered here on, which is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Next slide. And zooming in a little bit to UBC and UBC Forestry. So the University of British Columbia is a global center for research and teaching and consistently ranked among the top 20 public universities in the world. Sort of looking at it by number, we have around 60,000 total students, of which about 55,000 of those are located on the Vancouver campus. And sort of in this picture, what we can see is the inside of the Faculty of Forestry building. And we have some sort of pictures from the spring or the fall retreat at Loon Lake, as well as sort of working with some of the Trimble equipment that the students get to participate in over the year. And the students in the MGEM program are get to join our graduate student group. And there are over 300 graduate students within the Faculty of Forestry. So you get to, the students in this program are part of this elite group of graduate students in the Faculty of Forestry. And at this point, I'm going to pass the floor off to Dr. Coops, who's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the program.
Great, thanks, Kathleen, and it's a great pleasure to speak to you all today. Really to give you some sense of what the program entails, what you're considering enrolling in. We've got some basic structure, basically what we cover. We've got some additional presentations, as Kathleen said, and lots of times for questions that we can then follow up with you if your individual questions about the program. So the program we're talking about today is the Masters of Geomatics for Environmental Management. We also just call it the MGEM program, so you'll hear us refer to it in that way as well. As you're probably aware, it's a 9-month program and it's a course-based master's. So what that actually means is it's a professional program, and your program, you meet your course credits by doing coursework. There's no thesis as opposed to this master's program. You do the program entirely by undertaking courses within the program itself. And the program itself is 9 months long, starting in August 2025 and finishing in April 2026. So that's the time that you need to be at UBC. Classes start physically at UBC in the last couple of weeks of August, and you'll move through all the way through to April of the following year. When you do register in the program, though, it does mention the start date as being the start of July. We have some additional readings that you do. We have some initial preparations that you do through July and beginning of August, but you don't actually need to arrive at UBC Vancouver campus until around the second last week, moving into the last week of August, when we actually start the program. So the program itself is a combination of these courses that we've pulled together to cover this area of geomatics for environmental management. We're really proud of the program. It's been going for a number of years now, and you sort of learn this mix of using geomatics in the field, using geomatics in action, as well as the theory and the analysis that goes along with how you go away and apply geospatial data. We start with a welcome retreat, which is what happens in the last bit of August, which is where we actually go in the forest together. It's a great learning opportunity to learn the cohort for that year. And then we come in and do classes in September and January terms, where we're doing our coursework, our assignments, our project work around how to apply geospatial data to real world challenges. That's through the labs, through the classes, through the projects and the workshops. We're really engaged with the geospatial community here in Canada and globally. So there's opportunities through guest speakers. We have different networking events where there's a real opportunity for you to meet with real world leading industry professionals in the area of geomatics, both in Vancouver and globally. And also, as you do your projects, you can actually do projects focused on real world problems or topics that fit into the courses that we teach. To give you a sense of the coursework that we do cover, you really start by having this broader course around environmental management. Why do we need to do environmental management? What's the underlying theory of many of these environmental management approaches? And then through the term then, we learn how to use geospatial tools and concepts to address those environmental management. So core concepts like landscape ecology, carbon, biodiversity, all these topics are brought in as why we need to look after these landscapes. And then we learn about remote sensing, GIS, image processing, spatial statistics, programming in R, programming in Python that you carry through within the terms itself. You do get an opportunity to work on a small project as one of these courses that actually demonstrates to you how to use these tools for a particular application that you're interested in. And over the years, we've had a hugely varied set of applications that students work within in some of their courses, everything from biodiversity questions, projects in Africa, projects in Asia, examples of working in the boreal forest, people working in urban environments, and so on. So whilst the majority of the program is, well, all of the program is coursework, there is the opportunity to do small projects within these courses on particular topics that you might be interested in. We've tried to really capitalize on the fact that UBC is in a magnificent part of the world, here in Vancouver, and we're surrounded by beautiful forests. And the Faculty of Forestry, which is where you're based, actually has research forests. And so we have opportunities to go into the forest and see these tools in action. And you would have seen a variety of slides as I've been talking of students outside working in the forest with these different tools, working in groups, but you've also had a chance to see the in-person environment with a dedicated classroom where our students all work together, the courses all come to them in this dedicated homeroom space where you go and do your in-person class component of the program itself. Kathleen, would you like to touch and talk a little bit about where our students are getting jobs and sort of what's the market for MGEM graduates?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we really strive to do in the MGEM program is make sure that all of our students and alumni are set up for success and set up to enter the workforce in the geomatics sphere. And over the years of running the MGEM program, we've had our alumni go off into a diversity of different styles of employment. This is everything from NGOs, consulting agencies, private companies, government organizations, and across a multitude of different sectors, including everything from data analysis for BC Health to the World Wildlife Fund and Esri Canada. And the idea with this program is that we really want to make sure that our students are provided with this diversity of skills in this sort of toolkit and sort of can fit and focus their careers into these environmental style jobs, conservation, or what we might label as green jobs. And what I would like to sort of highlight here is that the MGEM program in no way limits you to working within those spheres. And we've had lots of our alumni go into sort of other areas, not necessarily in this sort of conservation sphere, but that seems to be where most of our alumni are ending up right now. Starting sort of position titles that people might get out of the program are things that are along the lines of geospatial technician, remote sensing analyst, data analyst, GIS specialist, just to name the ones that are sort of coming to the top of mind. But we really have quite a diversity of what our alumni are doing. And one of the things that I do in the program is I keep track of all of the alumni, where they've ended up and what they're doing. And it helps to build this network of alumni. And so the current students are able to connect both through guest lectures with the alumni and personally. And today we have one of our alumni here with us. So Gwen, I'm going to pass the floor off to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I am actually very recent graduate. It was actually just this past April that I finished up, so I am fresh out of the mill. And I came into MGEM with a background in ecological restoration and forestry. No coding. And I want you to hear that. If you're nervous about programming, I had no programming, no coding. I was familiar with GIS. I had worked with it for research projects before. I had fumbled with LiDAR all on my own before. In Arc Pro, which I don't recommend. What this program teaches you is the wealth of tools that you have at your disposal, so you're not fumbling so much. They will build you from the ground up with coding. You do not need to be scared. The way the classes are coordinated, the way the labs are structured, is you build on those skills week after week. It's incredible how much you learn just within that first term. And so what I do now is actually hold two roles. I work for Fisheries and Oceans Canada in their marine spatial ecosystem analysis team as an aquatic research biologist. So even though this is under the Faculty of Forestry, I am technically a marine biologist now. But I also hold another role, also in the marine world, which is the Atkinson House Sound Marine Stewardship Initiative. We're focused all on House Sound, and I am a program coordinator for them. So for both roles, it is very focused on map making, on public-facing communications, on being able to source data and transform that data and keep that data organized, especially in a huge organization like DFO. I'm very, very lucky with my roles, particularly in DFO, because that came directly from my 599. So that's a course that you're going to be doing where you're doing a capstone project throughout this program. My 599 focused on looking at eelgrass, so a seagrass, using drones and multispectral imagery. And I now continue to work with that with DFO, but at a more broader scale. So I feel really lucky that I just laddered directly into that role from MGEM. It's a really fantastic team, and the resources from MGEM fed right into that. So a few tips that I have if you are considering this program and you're successful in getting into it is your time management is essential. I would not recommend working or holding a job during this program if you want to get the most out of this program. The courses are not the only valuable thing out of this program. There will be guest lectures and other guest opportunities. Attend those. I know you're going to feel swamped with your schedules and you have a lot to work on, but those connections that you make are invaluable. The insights into the different career paths are also invaluable. You can go marine, you can go forestry, you can go health. There's so much that you can do that you might not know till you get to speak face to face with these alumni or just connections that Kathleen brings in. It's really worth your time. It's only a couple hours or maybe even an hour. So always go to those if you get the chance. And I'd say also data management. It's a huge thing that you learn from this. It's a thing that you should focus on while you're in school, and you can turn and go, help, my files look terrible, because eventually you're going to need to share that data with people. I'm working with First Nations very, very closely with the Squamish First Nation with MSI, the Marine Stewardship Initiative. I work with community members, community scientists, volunteers of all ages, and experts as well. So I need to be able to repackage and reformat my data and my reports to all levels of understanding and expertise. And that's something that you do get a good amount of experience in this program. You get to learn to present, which is a very important skill if you want to be able to communicate your work. So yeah, I really enjoyed this program. I made some really strong connections from that, both through your peers, the people that go on to be professionals with you, as well as the staff members here that you get to talk to today. Thanks for having me.
Well, Gwen, thank you very much. That's fantastic to hear your perspectives. Let me just throw a question to you that's in the chat that you sort of touched on, but I know everyone asks us, so I'll get it to come from you rather than me. The question is, as someone who has never had a background in programming in either R or Python, does the master's program cater to basic concepts of these coding programs?
Absolutely. Yes. You do not need to have, pre-held knowledge on this. They will start you from the basics, starting, if it's the same structure as when I was there last year, starting on your retreat to Loon Lake, which is a beautiful, beautiful spot, especially if you're not from BC. It's a great introduction to this gorgeous, gorgeous land that we live on. You start right there, and it's very, very basic. And then again, you'll be amazed how quickly you're doing the actual analysis and the intense stuff.
Thanks. And can I just ask you a question about sort of the cohort? We all have a room, the faculty come to that room to teach rather than you sort of walking around campus most of the time. We try to set up a bit of a kitchenette, and you've all got a laptop that's provided to you through the program. how did that help build that sort of sense of community for that year? Have you built friendships or working relationships with those students? And how did you sort of find that, as opposed perhaps an undergraduate where you're just one of a few hundred or a few thousand students?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the cohort structure. I myself came from BCIT prior to UBC, so I was exclusively in cohorts. So I really like that structure because it really mimics the workplace environment. You're not going to be the strongest in every single subject. You're going to do your best, but there's people that are going to have stronger skills or background knowledge that you might not have. Some folks were a lot stronger than programming than myself, but I really knew my ecology and my forest ecosystems. So you really learn to lean on each other and you learn from one another. And so being in that room is really quite the pressure cooker. You absorb a lot from your peers. And it's nice not having to run classroom to classroom. You can really just set up camp and work on your stuff and set up a good routine for yourself.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I'm sure there's going to be more questions we'll throw to you later on. Thanks,
No
Gwen.
worries.
Lee, let's jump to our admission requirements now, which I'm sure many students have questions about, and then we can move towards answering questions.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you so much, Gwen, for sharing your experience. So we have a couple of slides just to provide an overview, general overview of our admission requirements. We do accept a bachelor's degree. That is the minimum requirement for our program. And we generally have students applying from almost all faculties. I've seen degrees from geography, computer science, mathematics, engineering, or even humanities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a forestry degree. And environmental science is also quite popular as well. So it's any bachelor's 4-year degree. And we're also looking for a GPA. Minimum requirement is B+ equivalent. So that's about 76% and 3.3 in North American standards. And we're looking at only your 300 and 400 level courses if you're from North America. However, if you are in an international country, we are looking at the overall degree of a B+ standing. And we do have a link on our admissions webpage that you can go to and click on the country that you're applying from, and it will tell you exactly what the equivalent of a B+ is from your country. And also, it will tell you whether or not you require the English language proficiency test. In the past, if you are from a university where English is the primary language of instruction, you will not need to provide an English test. And if you're unsure, you can also send me an email or let me know and I can verify for you. We do have some acceptable English tests on our webpage that provides the minimum scores that we require. So that is all on our admissions page. And we also require a university level statistics course. So it can be an introductory course, 100 or 200 level is acceptable. And our application is currently open. So the deadline to apply is February 15th. We need all the supporting documents by midnight of Pacific Standard Time, February 15th. So how do you apply for this program? We have a admissions webpage on the MGEM webpage, which we'll share at the end of this presentation. And there's a button that says how to apply. It'll take you directly to the Faculty of Graduate Studies online application. And you can fill out the online application. You can save it and go back in and upload your documents later. We do have a number of supporting documents that we require. And one of them is the MGEM questionnaire, which just gives the committee a little bit more information about your background and what kind of projects or capstone you might be interested in. And there's also a letter of intent and a CV that you have to submit. So this is a great opportunity for you to also highlight your work experience or any professional work experience you may have. We also require scanned copies of all official transcripts from all the post-secondary schools that you've attended. So if you took a course in the summer at another institution, you will also need to provide that. We also need 3 references, and one of them will need to be an academic reference. We also, like I mentioned, you may have to submit an English proficiency test as well. And next slide, please. And we also offer advising sessions. So if you have any further questions after this presentation, feel free to click on the button that says speak with an advisor. And we have a few dates in the next few months, and we'd be happy to chat with you as well. And there's a QR code here that you can subscribe to for any for our mailing list, for any events and deadlines upcoming. I should also mention, if there's anybody on this call who are applying for the MasterCard scholarship, there is a different deadline for that. And you must have all the supporting documents and application in by December 13th instead of February 15th. So I think we've had some MasterCard scholarship info sessions already, but I just want to point that out as well.
Great, thank you, Lee. And there is a question here. Would you recommend us to submit the application as early as possible?
Yes, for sure. There are some benefits to that because in the past we have made some early offers in January or February if your application is very strong. So yes, if you have all your supporting documents ready, please feel free to submit early.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to echo that submitting your application early is always the best, especially because it gives any references a nice window to supply those letters of reference. And I would encourage that the earlier you can submit your application, the better.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. There's a couple of other related questions. When does applications for international students open and close? So that's the same dates that you've said, Lee, unless people are considering applying through the MasterCard Fellowship, which is a particular program for African scholars.
Correct. So our applications are open now and it closes February 15th for people who are applying for MGEM. But if you are a MasterCard scholar, you would have to apply to the MasterCard office first, and their deadline is October 31st, which is tomorrow. And then you'll have to wait to hear from them before you get the green light to apply for MGEM. So there's a different process for the MasterCard applicants.
Great, thank you. Just about prerequisites, Kathleen. There's a question here, and this is something we touched on. Would like to know if there's any prerequisites required to enroll in the program. I have a background in information management, but no experience in environmental or related subjects. So can you talk about our need for prerequisites? And in your answer, can you also just talk about that requirement for the stats course?
Yeah, that was where I was going to start. So beyond having the 4-year undergraduate degree, we do ask that our incoming students have a basic statistics course. We have addressed that on a case-by-case basis, understanding that sometimes people might have, substantial work experience, and maybe they don't have that stats course. And we can, that would be something to reach out to Lee and myself regarding. If you don't have that statistics course, but you think you have other things within your application that would make you a very well-qualified applicant. We don't have a requirement for students to come in with an environmental or ecology or sort of ecosystem management background into this program. And this is part of what builds the depth that we have in the cohort is we have different students that come in with these different backgrounds. And so there is this great peer-to-peer learning that happens. And, I think that what we're really looking for in our applicants is that sort of dedication and desire to advance in this geospatial geomatics sphere. And I see that there's some specific questions in the chat asking if they're specifically qualified. In these cases, I would encourage you to reach out to Lee with your very specific questions. But I would say that, if you have that 4-year undergraduate degree, you're hitting the minimum requirements, and this is an area and field that you're really passionate in. I would encourage you to put in an application. There was also a question about mature students who might have issues with getting academic references. We have handled this situation on a case-by-case basis in the past. And we have made exceptions depending on what that length of time is that you've been sort of working and out of academia. And so I would also encourage you to reach out to Lee and myself, and we can work together with you on that.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. So let me just stop the share so people can see our faces. I assume by now you have done that link. So there's a few other questions here that I'll keep working through and throwing to folks and answer to myself as well. So a couple of questions here. Since the course-based masters, are there any stipends provided for positions such as TAs? So this touches a bit on what Gwen talked about as well. It's an intensive program. And we don't really recommend that people are working part-time, doing a TA-ship, being a TA, having other duties at the same time while trying to do the program. I appreciate that is difficult, given these programs do have a tuition associated with them. But the reality is you're investing in yourself. You're investing in a 9-month program, and you really want to get the most you can out of it. If you are having to leave the program for different responsibilities that you've taken on, like being a TA for another course or working, it really limits your ability to get the most out of the program. So I do acknowledge that can be challenging with the tuition, but I really think you need to think about why am I here and what am I trying to achieve, and is this really working for me at this point in my life? And if it is something you seriously need to do, to really just make sure you're able to give it most of the most time you possibly can. So therefore, undertaking a TA-ship and being a TA for another program is problematic. We would not recommend it. And as Gwen said, many students don't. Many students recognize they need to stay focused on achieving that 9-month program. Another question, can you compare and contrast the benefits of MGEM and MGEM taught masters compared to a research master's? So that's an excellent question and one I often get. So just stepping back a little bit, a research master's at UBC might involve 2 years, well, at least 2 years. You do a research thesis that is then graded. You write peer-reviewed papers. You work with a professor on a particular research topic. You have a small amount of coursework that you need to do, but predominantly your master's is graded or assessed by your research output. And you are working as a researcher with a professor on a particular topic over a 2-year period. A professional master's is quite different. A professional master's is typically much shorter, and ours is 9 months. It's typically coursework, so you don't go and spend time doing an individual research project by yourself. You do your content through courses. You learn skills, and the idea of those skills are that they ready you to go and work in the workplace and to really jump over undergraduates and be at that next level in these different tools that you're being taught. So it provides you with a set of skills that ultimately should get you a job that's going to be much more focused and targeted than an undergraduate, because you've really had that opportunity to narrow these, or tighten your skills, advance your skills in this area of geomatics. A research master's student's not going to get that. A research master's student's going to learn how to do research, but they're not going to get the 30 credits associated with learning about geomatics and their application. You do get a little bit of exposure on working on a project, and Gwen touched on this as well. She had an opportunity to work on seagrasses, wasn't it? Yes, seagrasses. So a nice contrast to forest, which you're hearing a lot about. So working in the marine environment, and that ultimately led to the position that they are now in. In terms of how do we pick those topics, and how do you sort of find a topic that's suitable for you? Maybe Gwen, you want to talk about how you thought of yours, and then I'll throw to Kathleen about how we help students find theirs.
Absolutely, yeah. I was a little bit of a unique case, I think, just because I am egregiously ambitious, I think, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And just to speak a little bit to what Mr. Coop said here, is that I took this course knowing that I wanted the step into the professional life. I had a good amount of work experience, and coming out of my undergrad, I saw that the opportunities were the same as when I went back to school for that undergrad after a technical diploma. And that's just wasn't acceptable to me. I wanted to be doing a lot more meaningful, wide-ranging, and impactful work. And so with this course-based master's, you pick up all these skills that directly feed into that work. With a thesis-based master's, you might get really good at one of those skills, but you pick up so many more in this style of program. Back to the capstone, I reached out thanks to an info session like this. There was someone that spoke about alumni at DFO, and they were kind enough to put me in contact with them, who then put me in contact with somebody else. And I was initially really keen on kelp, and they were letting me know that, oh, we don't really have anything about that, but let us get back to you. And a few months later, I wasn't even accepted to the program yet. They reached out and said, hey, we might have a program on seagrass. Let us know if you get accepted. And so that worked out quite well for me. So we built that relationship from the ground up. But yeah, I'll let Nicholas talk about how, or Kathleen, sorry, talk about how they do it through the program.
Yeah, so I would say that every year we have a few students who sort of go the path that Gwen did, where the research project is very student-led, but still needs to have an external topical mentor. And that's one of the requirements that we have for these capstone projects. Most of the students will work on projects that have been submitted by external groups and organizations. And so myself and Dr. Paul Piquel, who's not on this call, over the summer when the program is not running, make an effort to solicit, gather, group, and get all of these projects, and then we present them to students. So, you know, every year we have students who say, this is what I want to study, this is what I want my capstone to be on, this is the data that I'm going to use, and this is who my mentor is, and they will submit that. However, that is, you know, I would say there's maybe 2 to 3 students who sort of go down that route. The more standard route is to work with these projects that Dr. Piquel and myself gather and collect over the summer. So there's no requirement for students to come in and have this predefined project, because I think that's an unreal expectation sometimes, because you don't know what you maybe want to work on. And the goal of the MGEM program is not to necessarily do a research project in this dedicated area, but it's to get this breadth of experience and this breadth of knowledge. And this capstone project is one way that we help students explore that. So hopefully that answers the questions about how do I come up with this topic? Well, you don't have to.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. And just to put that in context, this project, or this small research project that you do within the MGEM course is worth around 3 to 6 credits of the overall program of 30. So this is not a research project in the sense of a research master's. It's more of an application that you can focus on, do some small amount of work on, and focus what you're learning in one of the courses that you do out of the large number of courses that you do within MGEM. Okay, there's a couple of other questions that haven't been answered yet. One is, what are the prospects of pursuing a doctoral degree after being in the MGEM program? So we often get this question, and the answer is it is possible. So it is possible to apply for a PhD program after doing MGEM. You know, many universities have a requirement that you have a master's, and you've got a master's. You've got a master's in MGEM. So it is possible. And we have had examples of students who have done the MGEM program at UBC and then stayed at UBC to go and do a PhD. We've had students that have sort of stayed in the area of geomatics, and in fact, a couple have come into my research lab because I work in the area of remote sensing. We've also had students that have stayed and done PhD in other faculties at UBC, and then people that have moved out of UBC and done a PhD elsewhere. So it is possible. You know, you're going to have to compete to get into any PhD program like anyone else does, and you're going to have certain skills. They're going to be different from someone who's done a research master's. So maybe you don't have the peer-reviewed papers out of your master's because you don't write papers as part of MGEM, but often you are going to have the coding skills, the organization that Gwen touched on that they needed to have in order to get the program done in 9 months, data management, coding, remote sensing, and all this sort of stuff. So GIS databases. So you've got a real skill set that you can take into your PhD and ultimately be successful. So a long answer to say, yes, you can. It would entirely depend on where you wanted to go and what you chose to do, but it is possible.
I would also say that it's generally, I don't think, the normal sort of standard path that a lot of our graduates take. A lot of the people who are in the MGEM program are sort of, to echo what Gwen said, are trying to enter this professional geospatial sphere or conservation sphere, which doesn't always necessarily align with the goals of doing a PhD. And so, while it does happen, I would say most of our graduates sort of enter that professional workforce.
For sure. So if we had to put a number on it, perhaps 10% of students might go through a PhD. 90% are not doing this program as an entry to PhD because it's actually not designed to be the entry to a PhD. Great. A student's potential person's asked about their interest in a particular topic, and this sort of touches on Gwen, who had the idea of a topic before they even arrived to do the MGEM program. This person is similar, currently working in a research area of global agroecological zones, interested in impact on climate change on agriculture in my home country. Would there be opportunities for me to essentially make this my small project within 599? Kathleen. Potentially.
And I would also say that it depends. So as I've sort of outlined, one of the requirements is that there has to be an external topical mentor. And this is generally someone who is outside of the UBC sphere, or a professor who's not connected with the MGEM program, and they sort of agree to provide that higher level oversight to the project. We have, and we will continue to sort of say that if there is no topical mentor, then the project is not sort of sufficiently scoped for this purpose in the program. We also have the requirement that the data must already be there and collected and basically ready to hand off to the student to work on. Because of the short duration of the program, there is not sufficient time to do any data collection. And so we require that the topical mentor for these projects have the data there, ready, and the broad scopes of the project outlined. Now, if this is something that you would have, what I would recommend doing is in your application, when we ask for the prompt, maybe what research might you be thinking of, you can include that I've been in contact with this person, they might be interested in being a mentor for me. We can make sure that they get that message, that where they can fill out all the information that we require when we start to solicit for these projects, and we can sort of make sure that works. But we do require that these projects fit into a very specific requirement and have a very specific workload, because we don't want the students to be asked to do too much for this project and not be able to sufficiently engage with their other courses as well.
Great, thank you for that. A couple of other questions I can answer. There's a specific question here about the modelling component of does the modelling component of the program cover natural carbon sequestration within the AFOLU sector? So not specifically. The program isn't that, I suppose, focused on specific sectors and specific type of natural carbon sequestration. I mean, the idea of natural climate solutions and carbon is touched on in that overview of the program as we think about environmental management. But I wouldn't think that we'd be going into a great deal of detail in particular sectors like that. So I don't think there would be much coverage of that particular topic. There's another question about, I've got second class upper, my grade second class rather than first class. And I want to touch on this because I don't want to give the impression that we only take first class graduates, because we don't. The application process asks you for your transcripts, but we also ask for essentially a letter of intent, you to describe your interests of why you want to come into the MGEM program. And if we read in that letter and we read from your referees and we see that you are passionate about geomatics, you're passionate about learning more in this particular area, you're passionate about how these technologies can be used to be applied to certain environmental issues, and that's what we're looking for. I'd much rather have a second class person who's passionate about geomatics than a first-class person who doesn't care. We need people that are driven and that are passionate about these types of technologies and the way they can be used back in their home country, how they could be used in Canada, how they could be used for a variety of different applications. That's what we're looking for. So, yep, you've got to submit your transcripts. The transcripts are what they are, but there's opportunities in the letters of reference that you get for your referee to talk about your past work, your past passion, your demonstrated commitment to that topic. And then there's the letter of intent where you talk about your passion for geomatics. We read that very, very closely. And that is a key thing that we use to decide whether we'd like to offer you a spot in the program. And it's not just simply everyone's got a first class honours. So please be very thoughtful around your letter of intent, your referees, and demonstrate that commitment, and you would certainly be then evaluated on that as much as you're evaluated on your transcripts.
I think I've described it in the past as we try to look at the applications as holistically as possible. And we've been asked questions before about, what part of the application is the most important. And I think me and Nicholas, often say, well, it's all important because we look at all of it. And so there's not one thing that in the application that's more important than any other component. We try and look at the application holistically.
Great, thank you. A couple more, and then I'm going to throw to you, Lee, about any final things students should be sort of thinking about. What software does MGEM train students on specifically? So you learn R and Python. Software-wise, you learn ArcPro, QGIS. In remote sensing, you learn Envy. When did you learn? Did you learn any other software?
Sorry, my mouse was on my other screen. Yeah, you also get a brief introduction to ecognition, also do a bit of SQL for data management coding. You learn a bit about OpenStreetMaps and that whole system, how that works with Dr. Pakel. You learn a lot of different softwares. It preps you for basically every industry.
Fantastic, thank you. How much overlap is there between undergraduate GIS courses at UBC and the grad level GIS courses in MGEM? So great question. So if you're a UBC grad, then you may have done some undergraduate GIS and undergraduate remote sensing, either in forestry or geography or in earth and ocean sciences. So is there an overlap? Well, a little bit of overlap initially. Because remember, we don't expect graduates to have much experience in GIS and remote sensing. The point of doing the master's is you're learning about geomatics. So at the beginning of the semester in September, there's revision. And we go over critical concepts that students need to know in order to move them through the MGEM program. And some of that revision for people that have done those courses in undergraduate will be, you'll know that already. If you're a person who's had no geomatics, then you won't know that. So there is a little bit of initial overlap, I would say, as we cover revision and bring the class up to speed. But pretty quickly, you are learning new things. Remember that a lot of the program is taught within R, it's taught within Python, it's taught within QGIS and ArcPro. So you might know the basics from some undergraduate classes, but pretty quickly, you are learning about these things in different environments and applying them in different environments than perhaps you would have in your undergraduate course. So we do have a cohort of students that have come through UBC and stayed at UBC, and I don't think that they feel at all that it is repetitious once they're a couple of weeks underway in MGEM. So I don't see that as a problem at all. I'm admitted to, as a research student, am I able to take some MGEM courses? So no, you're not able to take MGEM courses if you're a research student. MGEM courses are for MGEM students that are in the MGEM cohort in the MGEM program at UBC. So that is a great thing about being in MGEM, is that these courses are for you, designed for you, taught for you, and taught for your cohort. It isn't open to other students more broadly. To the research student, I would say we do have geomatics research focused courses, feel free to drop me an email if you do have questions about what else we have at UBC for a research-focused student. Lee, can I jump back to you just to reiterate some of the key points while we wait for any final questions?
Sure. I was just going to say that when Kathleen said to submit your application early, it means that when you submit, the link that goes to your referee will not actually be sent to them until you submit, until you pay the application fee. And then the referee will receive an email notification to upload their reference letters to the application portal. So if the deadline is February 15th and you are applying last minute on February 13th, then the referee will only have a few days to upload the reference, because the application portal will shut down after a certain time and they will be unable to upload their reference letter. So it is important to submit your application earlier than the deadline to give your referee some time to write those letters. And those who are applying for the MasterCard, applying for MasterCard scholarship, if you request that you need an application fee waiver, I believe the MasterCard office will actually give you a coupon code so that you can use it when you apply to UBC MGEM program, and you will not need to pay the application fee, but you need to make the request at the time when you apply to MasterCard office.
Great, thank you. A final question has popped up. Are there any other funding opportunities besides the MasterCard fellowship? So there are not many. So there's not scholarships associated with the MGEM program. As we've sort of iterated, it's a professional program designed to give you these professional skills for employment. So it's not like perhaps a more traditional master's where you might get a research master's where there might be, you know, scholarships or stipends associated with that. That isn't really something that's offered through the MGEM program itself. Okay, Kathleen or Gwen, any final comments from either of you?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to this session. It's always nice to see this session is sort of well attended, that people are really interested in the program. I strongly, you know, as the coordinator of the program and one of the instructors in the program, I get to see the rate at which students learn, and it's always incredible. And it's always really enjoyable to watch these dedicated students during the program. And it's, you know, great to see that you guys are interested. Gwen, last thoughts as a recent alum?
Just in case anyone missed it in the chat, I just want an acknowledgement of the TAs that are at your disposal when you're in the program. They're incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly supportive. They're typically from Nicholas's lab, so they know a lot about remote sensing and coding, and are just generally great humans. And then, yeah, one last thing I'd like to say regarding the program is just you get out of it what you put into it. So really put your all into it, because you'll get a lot out of it that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Lee's just answering a couple of questions there, specifically again about the MasterCard and the application fees. Again, any question can be directed to our graduate student services team. So there's a website there. PM is professional masters, so professional masters or pm.forestry.ubc.ca. QR code there for additional questions. When you go to the MGEM page at forestry.ubc.ca under that website, we're there as well. Kathleen and I welcome any questions that you have about the program itself, what you learn, when you learn it, what's the learning environment, how would it actually work in your particular case. So we can answer any questions that you have specifically one-on-one that you didn't want to pose in the chat today. We're available to answer any particular questions you have. So admissions can look after the more admission ones, and Kathleen and I can deal with the more technical ones about the program itself. Many thanks for everyone joining us today. I can see that Gwen's typing a quick response for that person. You don't have to be an outgoing person to be an MGEM. Yeah, there's a blend of group work and a blend of individual assignments. You know, you do learn about public speaking, you do learn about professionally presenting your work, you do learn about being in teams, being in effective teams, and there's some teamwork, but there's also a fair bit of, well, significant amount of individual work in there as well. So it's a balance. I wouldn't be concerned at all if you're a bit of an introvert that this program is not right for you. Believe me, we've had our range of introverts and extroverts over the years. With that, I'll echo Kathleen's thanks to everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for the hour. We are willing to answer any question you have. We want you to come here fully aware of what you're committing to for the 9 months. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing as you just wanting to be comfortable in the program that you're enrolling in. So keep those questions coming to all the different people on the call. And I hope that we will see many of you in August 2025. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.